Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I wanted to share some advice of some of the scholars about the topic on how to seek knowledge. Also, I wanted to highlight some of the misconceptions regarding this topic. And I wanted to clearly lay it out. Manhajiyya of a talib al-ilm versus fawdawiyya fil ilm. A methodology in seeking knowledge in its correct way versus seeking knowledge in a disorderly fashion. So there's guidelines and there's pointers. So I'm going to start off with the first pointer, inshallah. And those listening, they can take notes or they could remember what we're saying, inshallah. This is important. The first principle and pointer is that in your manhajiyya, in your methodology of seeking knowledge, you need to, number one, try to seek knowledge in the way how the Salaf as-Saalih sought knowledge. So here we'll share some words of advice about this topic by Sheikh Muhammad Amal al-Jami, rahimahullah.
كانوا يفعلون لا تخالف منهج السلف حتى في طلب العلم. في طلب العلم والتحصيل اقتدي بسلفك وبالعلماء الأولين علماء المسلمين الذين كانوا لهم رحلات في هذه الدنيا في طلب العلم. بذلك يحصل لك ما تريد بتوفيق الله تعالى.
So here he mentions that even regarding how to seek knowledge and the attainment of ilm, do not oppose the Salaf as-Saalih. And we're going to give certain things that the Salaf as-Saalih were persistent upon and they emphasized regarding seeking knowledge. And we'll show that. But before that, we want to repeat this affair, that when you're seeking knowledge, it should be in the manner how the Salaf as-Saalih sought the ilm. And here we'll share some words of Sheikh Abdul Bin Burjis about this topic as well.
إخلاص النية لله سبحانه وتعالى ثم أخذ العلم على طريقة السلف رضي الله تعالى عنهم. يقول ابن عبد البر إن السلف لهم منهجية في طلب العلم وأن من لم يلتزم هذه المنهجية في طلب العلم فإنه لن يصل. ولذلك تجد كثيرا من الناس يطلبون العلم سنة سنتين 10 سنين وتقول هذول ما شاء الله حصلوا كثير ثم بعد هذه الفترة تنظر وإذا بهم في الشوارع مثل عامة الناس. لماذا؟ لأن العلم لم يؤخذ على أصوله.
So here Sheikh Abdul Bin Burjis rahimahullah, who is a scholar that was very young and successful and very remarkable in his works, he mentions that knowledge must be sought in the way how the Salaf as-Saalih sought it. And he quotes on Ibn Abdul Barr that ilm has a manhajiyya to it, a methodology. And the one who doesn't have the methodology and how he seeks knowledge like how the Salaf as-Saalih were upon, then he will not attain his target. And he gives example that some people, you would find them for a year or two, you assume they achieved a lot, and then in reality they lack barakah and they drop out. So this is from the speech. Also we wanted to share, bear with us, we're just going to share pointers by pointers, so to make it not too long. Some words of Sheikh Mubil about this. We'll forward it to the point.
أما بعد فالسبيل إلى طلب العلم هو السبيل الذي سلكه سلفنا الصالح رضوان.
So even regarding seeking knowledge, a lot of people they have a tendency to follow the Salaf as-Saalih in other matters, but they forget that even regarding how to seek knowledge and the etiquette and the mannerism, you should follow them and take them as good examples in that affair. So continuing with this topic, this knowledge, it has a sanctity, and the sanctity is based upon how the Salaf as-Saalih laid it out. For that reason, the scholar Az-Zurnuji, rahimahullah, in his book Ta'lim al-Muta'allim, Tariqa al-Ta'allum, laying it out and clarifying to the student how to seek knowledge, he says, اعلم أن طالب العلم لا ينال العلم ولا ينتفع به إلا بتعظيم العلم وأهله وتعظيم الأستاذ وتوقيره. He says, have knowledge of certainty that students will not attain knowledge and benefit by way of it, except by immensing this ilm and glorifying it and venerating it as people, and venerating the teacher and respecting him. So this is also from the ways of the Salaf as-Saalih. Then he says, قِيلَ مَا وَصَلْ مَنْ وَصَلْ إِلَّا بِالْحُرْمَةِ وَمَا سَقَطَ مَنْ سَقَطْ إِلَّا بِتَرْكِ الْحُرْمَةِ. That he said, those who succeeded did so through their adab, their veneration and respect to this methodology, and those who failed did so because of their lack of respect. So you must respect the methodology of the Salaf as-Saalih and how they sought knowledge. Because some people forget that seeking knowledge is an act of worship, so they end up looking at it like credits of school and think it's just about getting the content down, not the actual blessings in seeking knowledge, and not actually following the Salaf as-Saalih and how they encourage to seek knowledge. So Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, he says, كثير من الشباب يقرؤون قراءات متنوعة تارة في الحديث وتارة في التفسير وتارة في الفقه يسمعون ويحضرون مجالس العلم. He says many of the youth, they read various readings and different types of sciences and hadith and tafsir and fiqh. They listen and they attend different gatherings of people of knowledge. لكنهم إذا رجعوا إلى أنفسهم في من حضر سنة أو حضر سنتين إذا رجع لنفسه رأى أنه لم يحصل شيئا كثيرا، لم يفهم المادة التي ألقيت عليه، أو لم يؤسس عنده حضوره علما موصلا يمكن معه أن ينطلق ويقيس على منواله وينهج نهجا. He mentions that these people, many of them, they come back to themselves and realize they didn't benefit a lot. Then he says, وَالسَّبَب, the reason is not having a manhajiyya الصحيحة في طلب العلم. They didn't have the manhajiyya, the correct methodology in how to seek knowledge. So he says, there is upon a student of knowledge to adhere to this and lay it out. So there's a few books that have been written, and even there's a lecture by Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, Manhajiyya Talib al-Ilm. And these other books have been written, and some of them are recent and some of them are old, guidelines and adab of how to seek knowledge. So there's a lot of affairs that we try to follow the Salaf and we don't come with ourselves. Like for example, now people, they do things that the Salaf didn't do when they're seeking knowledge. Like they do tahdeedu al-mudda. They specify like how long they're going to seek knowledge for. This type of affair, if you are restricting it to maybe the time that you have off work, no problem, or a particular time that you can only remain in the land. From this angle, there's no harm. But if you're restricting in terms of how much you can benefit, and say, I'm going to do this in 6 months, I'm going to memorize this amount of knowledge, I'm going to memorize the Quran in this amount of time, you should avoid that. Because sometimes a person could do more and he limits himself because of how he specified these timings. Also from the things that oppose the Salaf as-Saalih is some people, they take knowledge all at once. And as the Salaf used to say, مَنْ رَامَ الْعِلْمِ جُمْلَةً ذَهَبَ عَنْهُ جُمْلَةً. Whoever tries to take knowledge all at once, it leaves him all at once. So it is, as Imam Zuhri says, مَعَ اللَّيَالِ وَالْأَيَّامِ, with the passing of days and nights, long duration. Another thing too, that some people, they specify ilm to only the major scholars. or they specified taking knowledge or traveling to these well-known personalities of major scholars. And this is what they do. And this is a question posed to Sheikh bin Baz about this.
معلوم أن أهل العلم يتفاوتون في علمهم فبعض الناس يقول لا يؤخذ العلم إلا من الأكابر ويترك الأصابع مع أن عامة الأمة أي طلاب العلم فيها من الأصابع.
خذ العلم ممن تظن عنده العلم صغيرا أو كبيرا أو وسطا خذ العلم من أهله.
So they mentioned this statement to Sheikh bin Baz. He says, take knowledge to whom you think has knowledge, whether he's a major person of knowledge or not that state, or he's a middle level. Take knowledge from his people.
كان الناس يأخذون العلم من أهله وإن كان ابن عباس من أصغر الصحابة كانت الوفود تفد عليه وتأخذ من العلم مع وجود الكبار من الصحابة كعبد الرحمن بن عوف والزبير بن عوام والحارث بن عبيد الله وهم جماعة. المقصود إذا عرف الشاب بالعلم والبصيرة يؤخذ عن العلم. نعم.
So he mentioned that in the time of the Sahabas, there was perhaps younger Sahabas, people were taking knowledge from them, while with the presence of senior Sahabas still available. So it shows you that this type of principle, that people, they give so much emphasis to just taking knowledge only from the kibar, or returning to them, or saying that my main goal is just to be taking knowledge from 4 individuals in a particular city, like what some will say, the 4 Saalihs, or these type of things. That type of method approach is not necessary, and it's not from the way of the Salaf al-Saalih. You take knowledge, haythu tayassar, wherever is made easy, whoever has it. And sometimes, as they say, قد يوجد في النهر ما لا يوجد في البحر. قد يوجد في المفضول ما لا يوجد في الفاضل. You can find in the river at times what you cannot find in the ocean. And you can find with someone that is less virtuous of what you may not find with someone who is more virtuous than him. So a person takes knowledge wherever it is, because that is where it is upon you to seek it, as long as the person is upright. And then also from the things that people oppose the Salaf al-Saalih and the Manhajiyah is they take a lot of shortcuts. Everyone wants to try to take shortcuts. And here's some advice of Shaykh Salih Fawzan about this topic.
إلا قليلا فيحتاج إلى صبر ومعاناة وعدم استعجال، واللي ما معه صبر ما يستطيع المضي، يصبر على طلب العلم، يحتاج إلى وقت طويل مع طلب العلم. فمن آداب طالب العلم ألا يستعجل ويقول أنا بختصر المراحل وبأنتهي بسرعة. لا، هذا يختصر له العلم كما اختصر هو ولا يحصل من العلم شيء.
So he mentions that knowledge requires long duration, طول الزمان, and it requires patience and perseverance. And a person should not be hasty and say, I'm going to try to obtain knowledge quickly. You find this now, people are as if they're in a rush. And here the Sheikh says, some of them, they're saying they're going to try to take shortcuts. So he says those who try to take shortcuts of knowledge ends up cutting them off instead of the other way around. So this is the advice. Because we know in the Quran, we learn from the etiquettes and the manhajiyah of seeking knowledge, is what Allah says, سَأُرِيكُمْ آيَاتِي فَلَا تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. I'm going to show you my signs, therefore do not be hasty regarding it. So this shows you that we should not rush when learning, we should take our time when seeking knowledge. Also Allah says, لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به. Move not your tongue with it, O Muhammad, to hasten with the recitation of the Quran. So this is from the reasons that we don't rush. We take our time. And as Shaykh Ibn Baz says, طلب العلم, it requires patience and perseverance. And he says, كثير من الناس قد يطلب العلم ولكن لا يكون عنده الجد والصبر والثبات. Many people, they seek knowledge, but they don't have endurance, perseverance. Some people expect learning knowledge to be like a walk in the park with nice roses, with no thorns to it. If they encounter any difficulties in their learning, they start to try to find shortcuts around it, instead of exhausting themselves and trying to attain knowledge through its hardships. People have to have more dedication. So this is upon us. And if you look, they said, if even prophets, when seeking knowledge, had to adhere to the adab, the etiquettes and manners of ilm. Look at the story of Musa alayhi salam with Khidr. قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا. Musa said to him, may I follow you on the condition that you teach me from what you have been taught of sound judgment. They take this from the etiquette before attending a class to seek permission from the teacher to join, or when to enter a markaz. Same thing when you're dropping out of a person's class. So you should seek permission, let him know. You don't just drop out. That's not from the way of how this manhaji is mentioned. Also, قال ستجدني إن شاء الله صابرا. And he shows that you have to be patient and patient with your teacher. These are all from the manhajiyah. And here are some other affairs where Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh mentions.
بعضنا يذهب إلى دروس مفصلة جدا يمكث أصحابها في كتاب سنين عددا طويلة ما انتهوا منه، أو في الباب الواحد يجلسون أشهر ونحو ذلك، ويظن أن هذا يحصل معه علما. لا، هذه الطريقة ليست بطريقة منهجية.
You find that some people, they attend big classes that are way above their level, مطولات, or classes that people are spending years in. And he just started, and he forgets to start also with the basics. So this type of person, he misses out, the Shaykh mentions.
لأنه لم يترفق صاحبها فيها. وقد قال جل وعلا ولكن كونوا ربانيين بما كنتم تعلمون الكتاب وبما كنتم تدرسون. كونوا ربانيين فسرها أبو عبد الله البخاري رحمه الله تعالى رحمة واسعة في صحيحه، قال الرباني هو الذي يربي الناس بصغار العلم قبل كباره. هذا الرباني في العلم والتدريس هو الذي يربي الناس بصغار العلم قبل كباره.
So he mentioned that this person, he didn't go in order, and as a result he misses out. So he mentions the ayah that كونوا ربانيين, be people that cultivate. And he says the meaning of it, as Imam Bukhari mentions, الذين يعلمون صغار العلم قبل كباره, those who teach the basics of knowledge before that which is in depth regarding it. So the people that are all over the affair, all over them, this affair of not being founded upon principles, you find that they are mushattat al-azamat. As some lines of Shaykh Mubbali used to read, ومشتت العزمات ينفق عمره حيران لا ظفر ولا إخفاق. A person who's disorderly with regards to his decisions wastes his life, confused, neither achieving his goals nor falling. So you don't want to be of this stuff here. And also from the affair is that you take what you can bear. And here's some advice of Shaykh Mubbal.
ينبغي لها أن تنظم وقتها وألا تكثر الدروس التي تدرسها فإنها ربما لا تهضمها ويصير حالها كما قيل ومشتت العجنات ينفق عمره حيران لا ظفر ولا يفتاق.
So the Shaykh mentions that the person should organize their time when seeking knowledge, and they should not take too many classes that they cannot bear in a state where they cannot digest the benefits. So this is the advice also from the manhajiyya of Talib al-Ilm. And here's some advice of Shaykh as well about organizing one's schedule.
ثم رتب وقتك. من المنهجية في الطلب ترتيب الوقت أن لا تكن عشوائيا. فمثلا بعد الفجر خذ أذكارك، خذ قسطا منها جيدا، ثم استمر في القرآن واعتني بالقرآن فذاك وقت مبارك. إن كنت حافظا راجع، وإن كنت غير حافظ احفظ حتى تكمل. خذ في القرآن في ذلك الوقت مبارك، وقت نشاط.
So he mentions, organize your schedule for seeking knowledge. Don't be ashwa'i, don't be random in how you seek knowledge. Some people are like that. They just randomly pick up books, randomly just choose what they want to study. They don't have a manhajiyya, methodology in how to seek knowledge. And he give examples like choosing the time after Fajr to read Quran and memorizing. If you haven't memorized at that time, that's a time of energy. And here, one point also from the manhajiyya, seeking knowledge, is that you prioritize the memorization of the Quran.
عن أبي الزناد أنه قال أزهد الناس في القرآن المتفقه. فبعض الناس قد ينشغل ببعض العلوم ويظن أن انشغاله فيها خير فينشغل بها عن الأفضل وهو كتاب الله عز وجل.
Some of the Salaf used to say those who are the most abstinent of the Quran are the mutafaqqiha. I mean, in the people that are busy with jurisprudence, the fine details of it, they get distracted. So he's saying that the person should not get distracted from memorizing the Quran. He should have his portion and where he reads it. And this doesn't mean that you only do the Quran, because some people, they have a misconception. They think that you just focus on the Quran alone. Because sometimes some of the advices of the scholars are regarding that which is what you do ibtida'an, what you would do initially. Like for example, a person just starting, a young child or so forth, they would start with the Quran first. Generally, as those type of people, they have that affair, like how the Sahabas with their children. But if it is in a scenario where a person, he is, for example, older age, he would do both. In fact, some say you would start with even the Aqidah first, because of narrations that come regarding that, like the Sahaba Jundub ibn Abdullah, he said, "Kunna ma'a Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wa nahnu fityan hazawira, فتعلمنا الإيمان قبل أن نتعلم القرآن ثم تعلمنا القرآن فازددنا به إيمانا." And the hadith in Sunan ibn Majah authenticated by Shaykh al-Albani, that we're young, strong youth. We learned first Iman, our belief, then we learned Quran. Then, as they said, we did this before we learned our belief, before learning the Quran. Then after we learned Quran, we increased by way of it Iman. So this is the affair in terms of your aqidah, especially if you're at an age of responsibility. You should not just focus on the memorization of the Quran alone without learning your aqidah. And here's some advice of Shaykh Saalih Fawzan when he was asked about this.
هذا سائل يقول: أيهما يقدم طالب العلم، حفظ القرآن أو تعلم التوحيد والعقيدة؟
يجمع بينهما، يجعل لهذا وقتا ولهذا وقتا، والوقت واسع ولله الحمد. نعم.
He was asked, what does a student of knowledge give precedence to? Memorizing Quran or learning Aqidah and Tawheed? He says he does both. He gives a time for this and a time for that. He says, Alhamdulillah, time is spacious. Also, here's some speech of Sheikh bin Baz.
هذا سؤال من شخص يقول: أنا يا شيخ طالب علم شغوف بالعلم، ما توجيه سماحتك لي؟ هل أبدأ بحفظ كتاب الله كاملا مع أني أحفظ اليسير منه، أم أبدأ بدروس العلم والمحافظة عليها؟
عليك أن تعمل ما يعمله إخوانك وزملائك، تدرس مع الإخوان في المعاهد العلمية ونحوها، وإذا تيسرت المعاهد فهي أفضل من غيرها، مع العناية بما تيسر من حفظ القرآن في الأوقات المناسبة. عليك أن تقوم بهذا وهذا، وأنا ميسر بحمده. تدرس الدراسة النظامية لأنها تدعو الحاجة إليها اليوم ولا بد منها، ومع ذلك تدرس كتاب ربك في أوقات أخرى، ويكون لك زميل صالح يعينك على ذلك. ومن سار على الدرب وصل. المصيبة الإهمال والإعراض والغفلة. أما من جد واجتهد وسار على الدرب فإنه يصل بإذن الله، ومن يتق الله يجعل له من أمره يسرا. خزائن.
So here, some words of advice by Sheikh bin Baz. When he was asked about a person who said he memorized only a little bit of the Quran, should he just focus on the Quran, or should he attend the classes and study ilm? So the Sheikh mentions you should do what your fellow brothers are doing. So if you're in an area and there's a curriculum or something that's ongoing, you attend with them. And he said you do also on your other timings, memorization of the Quran. And he said you try to do both. So this is what the advice. So when a person, he comes to, for example, he goes travel to Egypt, or he attends a masjid or a place, and he does what everyone else is doing, of attending classes that are ongoing, of the general classes that are for beginners, and he continues with his memorization of the Quran. Some people, they expect to arrive to a place and everything to be at his level or everything prepared for him. He joins with the people, and he has to understand that he cannot just say that he's going to memorize the Quran alone. And it may be for young children, but adults, he shouldn't do that. As a man came up to Abdullah ibn Mubarak, as a found book in al-Adab al-Shar'iyyah by Ibn Muflih, يا أبا عبد الرحمن يا أبا عبد الرحمن في أي شيء أجعل فضل يومي في تعلم القرآن أو في تعلم العلم. So he asked him, what should I make my extra time in my day? Should I let it to be learning the Quran or learning knowledge? So he said, هل تحسن من القرآن ما تقوم به صلاتك? Do you have something that will help you and suffice you for your prayer of the Quran? He says, yes, na'am. Then he said, عليك بالعلم. It's upon you to do knowledge. So some scholars, they harmonize between some of the Salaf, at times advising with learning the Quran first, and other times saying to do ilm, to show that when a person is an adult, just to say to him to focus on Quran alone, you shouldn't do that. You should tell him to combine. And also the books and the method and so forth, from the way is that the teacher decides that. Yes, there's general advice that we see, but in specifics regarding you, your teacher is the one that decides what is best for you. Some people, they read some general advices of scholars on how to seek knowledge, and then they apply it to themselves, which was just a general advice. The specifics and the application of it, that requires your teacher to see what's best for you. And here's some advice by Sheikh Albani about that.
حينئذ فالشيخ هو الذي يوجه المريد إلى الكتاب الذي يناسبه هو من جهة ويناسب الطلبة من جهة أخرى.
He mentions the teacher is the one that decides what is suitable for you as a book to begin with. Also, here are some words of Sheikh Salih Fawzan.
وإن كان في غير الدراسة النظامية يقرأ على أحد المشايخ فإن الشيخ الذي يقرأ عليه هو الذي يختار له الكتاب المناسب.
So when a person in his locality, the teacher there, he consults and asks him, as we know, this is from the etiquettes of how the Salaf al-Saalih were, وَإِرْشَادُ أُسْتَاذٍ, the guidance of a teacher. So some people, they think they know it better. They just want to decide what they think is suitable for them. That's not correct. The way with the manhajiyya of ilm is that you consult someone who has already tread this path, who already perhaps went through certain mistakes, and he learned from his mistakes, and he's going to teach you how to do it the correct way. So this is it, and also it varies. And from one person to another, here's some words of Sheikh Albani.
نعم. يقول السائل: بمناسبة الكلام عن العلم والتعلم، ما هي العلوم الشرعية التي تنصحون طالب العلم أن يبتدئ بها؟ هل هي الحديث أم اللغة أم التفسير أم أصول الفقه إلى آخره؟
يختلف هذا بطبيعة الحال من طالب إلى آخر. لو فرضنا طالب مثلا متخرج من المدرسة الابتدائية، فهذا يجب أن يدرس الفقه ليتمكن من تصحيح عباداته التي فرضت عليه.
So they asked Sheikh Albani about what science a person should start with. Is it fiqh, hadith, is it lugha, and the likes of these sciences? He said it varies, it depends on the situation and the person. So this is correct, and it's not all one person. You give them all the same advice and choose the same book. It could vary from one person to another. So this is upon a person to seek guidance from the people who have preceded you in seeking knowledge. And also, they mentioned sometimes a person, he would seek knowledge based upon the curriculum that's available in his land. Or he يتفقه على مذهب بلدي. He seeks knowledge upon the school of thought of his land. Because Imam Zahabi says, لو أراد الطالب اليوم أن يتمذهب في المغرب لأبي حنيفة لعصر عليه كما لو أراد أن يتمذهب لابن حنبل ببخارى وسمرقند لصعب عليه فلا يجيء منه حنبلي ولا من المغرب حنفي ولا من الهند مالكي. He mentioned the Sirah A'lam al-Nubala, showing that a person, it's going to be hard for him to go to certain lands and want to take on another madhab that's not popular there or it's not being taught in the curriculum. And some people, what they hear of advice online of a scholar, and then they want to impose the same teachings of that curriculum onto the land that he's there, which is probably has a different approach. Because the curriculums vary from one land to another. Subjective, and some of them have different approaches, different books. They're all beginner books, but different styles of teaching, different ways of it. So you should take what is available for you. And that's why Shaykh Albani says, فَلِذَلِكَ لَا نَسْتَطِيعُ أَن نُحَدِّدْ طَرِيقًا لِكُلِّ طَالِبِ عِلْمٍ. For this reason, we cannot specify one way of seeking knowledge just for every student. And also, some of the advice as well is that a student of knowledge, he should combine between durūs al-āmmah and durūs al-khāṣṣah. General classes where he attends as gatherings and circles of the masajid, and classes of specifics, that is of his level. So he needs to look at both, and he needs to combine. He shouldn't not show interest. Now we find people, they won't attend the general classes that are perhaps a benefit of iman. You learn in their adab, mannerism, you learn in them so much things, and they'll say because it's not at my level, or I want to take this book first, or this is a general class. And this is not correct. The person will combine between both. And here's some advice of Sheikh Yahya about it.
وهكذا أيضا الدروس العامة لها عظمتها ومكانتها، بها تعرف وتتخرج منها. نعم. والدروس الخاصة لها أهميتها ومكانتها من حيث أنك تأخذ المناسب على مستواك في ذلك، واختر العلم حيث ترى العلم اجلس فيه، إنما يجلس المرء حيث يستفيد، وهكذا.
And also he mentions a good point that a person sits wherever he's benefiting. Some people, they'll attend a class and then someone will tell them, you're not in ta'sil, you're not structured, you should drop out of this class and attend this class. While the person perhaps was benefiting tremendously and was taking in the benefits and was taking notes. That's not correct. And a person, where he finds himself benefiting, he will continue to attend. So, from the other affairs is that some people, they find themselves to oppose the way of the Salaf al-Saalih and how they seek knowledge, but they're not continuous. They have this inconsistency, and it's a pattern with some of them. Here's some advice of Sheikh Sulaiman Ruhaili.
ولا تكن كالعصفور الذي يتنقل بين الأغصان. الثبات لطالب العلم مطلوب. بعض طلاب العلم يأتي عند الشيخ فلان يجلس يومين 3 4 5 أسبوع أسبوعين 3 أسابيع يحضر عند الشيخ، ثم يأتي واحد يقول الشيخ فلان فتح درسا في المسجد الفلاني والله روعة، طبق الكتاب الذي عند الشيخ الأول وذهب إلى الشيخ الآخر، بعد أسبوعين ينتقل إلى شيخ آخر، مثل العصفور كل وقت على غصن، هذا لن يحصل العلم.
So he mentions that you shouldn't be like a bird that is just flying from one branch of a tree to another, just bouncing off. This is not your affair. You shouldn't be like some students of knowledge. They attend for a teacher maybe a few days or week. Then when they hear another teacher, another sheikh opens another class, they say, oh, mashallah, and then they leave and go to the other class. And then after that, he hears another new class opening up, then he drops out from that. So this is not usually your affair. Because some people, they think that this is justified. They'll say, I need this class, it's for my level, so I'm going to drop out of this book that I've been doing for that class. That's not correct. Because if what happens in that class, if you find another book that someone else is opening at a similar time, that you need more, are you going to just drop out as well? That's going to be a wrong pattern. So some people, Allah may not grant them success in how they seek knowledge because of them opposing the manhajiyya of the Salaf al-Saalih and how they sought knowledge. They just think it's based upon content and information that they're receiving. Little do they know that there's consequences for your actions, that perhaps Allah may deprive you of being successful in your path. The next affair is that you should prioritize classes of attendance. When you're doing these books, you should try to attend. And here's some words of Sheikh Abdul Karim al-Khudair.
وهنا في علم الحديث يبدأ الطالب بالنسبة لمتون السنة يبدأ بالأربعين النووية، لأنها حديث جوامع سلك آل العلم تقريرها على المبتدئين من الطلاب، ومع ذلك يقرأ عليها الشروح ويحضر فيها الدروس ويسمع ما سجل عليها من أشرطة ويستفيد فائدة عظيمة.
So this is what's always been suggested, that you attend with a teacher, the book, and then afterwards you go over the explanations, or after every class, after completing, you go over the explanation, and you listen to certain tapes have been explained, and you will complete the book from various angles. Also, regarding the topic of memorizing the mutūn of every science, that's encouraged, generally speaking, because we know فَحْفَظْ فَكُلُّ حَافِظٍ إِمَامًا, memorize, for verily everyone memorizes a lot to become an imam. But it's not necessary. Sometimes some people, I think if the person didn't memorize it and he just has it generally in a way where he can retain it, generally speaking, or recall where it is, of repeating it a lot, then that's also good. Some people think wrong of that. Here's some words of Sheikh Abdul al-Badr.
إذا لم تتمكن من حفظ المتن، يعني لم تتمكن مثلا من حفظ العقيدة الوسطية، يقول اقرأها كثيرا، اقرأ، كرر قراءة المتن مرات كثيرة، حتى وإن لم يكن محفوظا عندك يكون أشبه بالمحفوظ، وإن لم يكن محفوظا يكون أشبه بالمحفوظ. إن لم يتيسر لك تحفظ الواسطية حفظا كاملا بحيث إذا طلب منك أن تقرأ قراءتها من أولها إلى آخرها، إن لم يتيسر لك هذا الحفظ المتقن، كرر قراءة كتاب العقيدة الواسطية مرات كثيرة في الأوقات المختلفة، فسيكون بإذن الله تبارك وتعالى هذا المتن أشبه بالمحفوظ.
He mentions that a person, for example, عقيدة الواسطية, he should try to memorize it, and if he can, then he should at least repeat it in a manner where he can, as if he has it, like he memorized it, meaning that he knows where it's located, the benefits, and what part and which chapter. So this is encouraged. This is encouraged. And as for some of the mutūn, some scholars, they don't see to memorize some of these mutūn. They see more so to memorize the Book of Allah and the Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And here Sheikh Rabi' quotes from a scholar that advised them, and I believe he's referring to Sheikh Mubil. But here we'll read a statement. He says, الوقت الذي يقضيه في حفظ مختصر من نوع ما أنا أرى أنه يقضيه في حفظ كتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The time that a person spends in memorizing these small texts, these mutūn of a particular science, he says that he should spend it memorizing the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Any more hadith you can memorize, you can more benefit regarding the Book of Allah. Because he said, وَكَمْ حَفِظْنَا مِنَ الْمُتūن وَرَبِّ السَّمَاءِ وَضَاعَتْ. He said, how many mutūn of small texts we memorized? He said, by Allah, they've all went and been wasted, meaning that he forgotten them or has left him. He said, وَكُنْتُ مُقْبِلًا عَلَى حِفْظِ الْمُتūن فَنَصَحَنِي أَحَدُ الْمَشَايِخِ. He said, at a time I was trying to memorize some of the mutūns of the small texts of knowledge, like some of these books, mutūn طالب علم. He said, so some of the mashayikh advised me and said, سوف تترك هذه في يوم من الأيام وقد حصل هذا له ولغيره. He said, you're going to leave this off, a day will come, and he said it happened for him and some other than him. So it's subjective in terms of these mutūn, like Sheikh Mubi used to say about متن أبي شجاع and زاد المستقنع. He used to say, ضاعت فيه الأعمار. The book غارة الأشرطة, he says, people waste their lives memorizing that. And memorizing the source of the texts of people. And yet some scholars have other point of views that they encourage to memorize it, and they say the proofs, the adillah, are found in the shuruhat, what Sheikh Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymin mentions. So it's subjective. So it's not binding, it's not necessary. But if a person were to do so and he has the time, then that is also khair upon khair. Another thing too is that some people, they will go to travel overseas and just perhaps before learning their aqidah and going and learning sifatu salat and fiqh and so forth, they go straight to Qira'aat, and probably Qira'aat al-Ashr, the 10 Qira'aat. And then later on you hear, years later, that person, he doesn't know how to pray well, or doesn't know how to wudu well, or he falls off or gets doubts. And I know someone particularly who was really good in the Quran and so forth. Now he's with Asha'ira. And it's good to strengthen yourself first in your aqidah. And what would benefit you with the 10 Qira'at, and then you go with the Ash'aris and these people, or you get doubts. Another thing too, that some people, when they're seeking knowledge, they think that knowledge is based upon kathratu al-masail, having so much information. And as Imam Malik would say, al-ilm laysa bi kathrat al-riwaya. It's not based upon so much reports and information. It's not based upon so much reports and information. And as Imam Malik would say, al-ilm laysa bi kathrat al-riwaya. It's not based upon so much reports and information. And as Imam Malik would say, al-ilm laysa bi kathrat al-riwaya. It's not based upon so much reports and information. and how much you can put in your notebook, or you're comparing yourself to this person. And people keep saying that I don't feel like I'm benefiting. He's been attending classes, halaqat, and he's saying that he doesn't feel like he's benefiting. And yet he is benefiting from so much angles. Here Shaykh Salih Fawzan was asked about someone saying, I sought knowledge for a number of years, but with that the information hasn't stayed, nor do I feel the benefits. What do you advise with me? Or what do you advise to me about this? He says, don't say I don't feel the benefit. For the student of knowledge, his movement is in seeking knowledge, is an act of worship. Similar to movements of the one who repents and migrates to a land of good. The intent should not be that you'll be a scholar. Rather, the intent from you seeking knowledge should be raising ignorance from yourself, that you worship Allah with correct forms of worship, and that your belief system be correct, even if you do not benefit except yourself and children, and this is much good. And some people, the way they look at things is like they're in a university. He tells you, I'm not benefiting, I'm not structured, I'm not this. He says, SubhanAllah, you're removing ignorance from yourself. How much have you learned? This is ibadah. Also, just for a follow-up, that verdict was attributed to Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, and Shaykh Salih Fawzan, to be more correct, it is to Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, as goes back to his tape, al-Wasaya al-Jaliyah li-istifada min durūs al-ilmiyah. طيب, so we must understand this. Another thing too, people, they think their success is based upon titles. You know, when he says, I'm a graduate, and finally I made it, I'm now successful. Shaykh Abdul Muhsin Abbad used to say the real seeking knowledge begins after graduation. And he says it's upon the students of Islamic knowledge to consider himself a beginner in seeking knowledge after graduating. And this is what I found with his reference. So a person, and it's also similar words of Shaykh Salih Fawzan who mentioned this, don't get too attached to titles. Sometimes you can still be at the beginning level. You just try to let time pass, duration, and continuing and learning, and give emphasis to attending circles of knowledge in the masajid. As we know, the great benefit of that. So don't turn away from halaqat of ilm, and you're capable of attending, merely because you say, I want to take this book first. Or this is, if you have time, attend and benefit. And better than just sitting around and doing nothing, or something else that people, especially if it's a general class, that you can benefit. Like we find some people, they don't show interest in attending some halaqat. That we find like some people, they don't attend da'u dawa, the cure and the disease, or heart softener classes of those books, al-fawaid, because they feel like it's not part of a curriculum. They can be doing something else more productive, of taking books, structure knowledge of muqarrarat, as if their goal is just to finish something as like credits. And this is not, a person should not, this is a person's in need of. And especially if you turn away from these type of gatherings with no need, with no reason, it can be severe. And that fear, Shaykh Mal says about the hadith, وَأَمَّا الثَّالِث فَأَعْرَضْ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ. As for the third one, he turned away, so Allah turned away from him. He says, هذا وعيد شديد يفيد الحذر من الإعراض عن حلقات العلم وعن طلب العلم. This is a severe threat which should benefit us to be extra cautious about turning away from the circles of knowledge and from seeking knowledge. And then Ibn Hajar says, وَهُوَ مَحْمُولَ عَلَى مَنْ ذَهَبَ مُعْرِضًا لَا لِعُذْرٍ هذا إن كان مسلما. So this is intended, the meaning of the hadith, someone that turns away with no reason at all. So yeah, some people may have a reason, but we should always give opportunity to attending. Another thing too is do not take this different suggested curriculums. The scholar said a student, a beginner, should start with. He started in Aqeedah, the first book, for example, Usul al-Thalatha, or study with this book, and Fiqh, the first book. And to be binding, because we find that their advices vary. and it's subjective. And so you find, like, for example, in fiqh, Shaykh al-Bani sees the first book a person study is fiqh as-Sunnah, it's Sayyid Sabiq. And some other scholars may see a different book. And like Shaykh al-Bani, when he was asked what first book that you should study in Aqidah, he mentions Tahawiyah.
أما أن يكون 100% فهذا أمر مستحيل. العقيدة الطحاوية ويبتدئ بالعقيدة نفسها وعليها بعض تعليقات مني أنا، ثم فيما بعد إذا قيض له رجل طالب علم قوي أو عالم فاضل ينتقل بهم إلى الشرح لابن أبي العز الحنفي هذا، فإنه شرح سلفي. وكتب ابن تيمية وابن القيم الجوزي بصورة عامة في العقيدة هي يعني العسل المصفى.
So he mentions, when he was asked the first book a student of knowledge should start with, he said Aqidah Tahawiyah. So some scholars, they have different approach. They don't mention, like, for example, Usul al-Thalatha, or they don't mention this book or that book. That some people, they feel like if they don't have it, they didn't study it, khalas, their seeking of knowledge has not started a good structure. Or a class of another book of a beginner book will be starting. But because their mind is set on one particular book, they will not attend the other beginner book. They feel like they have to take this book first. That's not correct. This is what people are going to an extreme in. Also, even if there was a book that supposedly you're supposed to take after, and it's a book that maybe it rarely opens up, and you probably miss out if you don't take it, you should attend for it. إن لم تستطيع شيئا فدعه وجاوزه إلى ما تستطيع. They mentioned this is like يقدم الحاضرة على الفائتة عند ضيق الوقت. The principle, like regarding salat, that there's a person forgot the prayer, and now the current prayer is ongoing, and just a little bit time left. For example, Asr and it's Maghrib, and he didn't pray Dhuhr yet. Should he pray Asr first, or should he pray Dhuhr? A group of scholars say here is precedence to the current timing of the prayer that he's in, then he'll make up for the other prayer. But you're not going to miss out on two things then. You're here, you're going to take that what's available. So here you would, like if there's a class ongoing, it's probably not at the first level of yours, but it is a book that you're going to take soon. Attend, benefit from it. Who knows, you may not get another chance to attend this class, or with a particular teacher or a person. Take the opportunity, and maybe the other book that you want will open up afterwards, then you can catch up on. This is how knowledge is sought. But to entirely ignore classes that are being opened up on the excuse that I'm waiting for this particular book to open up, that's not correct as well. So these are advices that I wanted to give about this topic. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit us and to make us a people who hear speech, follow the best of it. There's books that have been written about ta'sil al-ilm, structuring yourself of knowledge, and certain things about that. A person can benefit as well from those books. A lot can be said, but one thing that we also advise is the adab of ilm. And Ibn Qayyim says, Unwan al-sa'ada, al-adab unwan al-sa'ada. Having good etiquette and mannerism is a sign of happiness. If you want success. Also have mudhakara. The Salaf and their manhajiyya of ilm, they used to do mudhakara, review amongst each other, revise. Students of knowledge complain that they don't recall and can't retain the benefit because they don't do this, what the Salaf used to do. So stop taking it like credits of school or like some university you're going to, This is what some people unfortunately are doing. They resemble seeking knowledge to how we obtain credits from college and university. Remember that it's upon you to seek knowledge in a manner that is the most honorable in the sight of your Lord, since you are traversing a path to Jannah in doing so. And I wanted to read you some statements. I wanted to read also a statement of Ibn Abdul Barr. He said, طلب العلم درجات ومناقل ورتب لا ينبغي تعديها ومن تعداها جملة فقد تعدى سبيل السلف رحمهم الله. He said, ومن تعدى سبيلهم عامدا ضل ومن تعداه مجتهدا زل. Mentioning that seeking knowledge is of levels, and it's not upon you to go beyond those levels. Whoever goes it all entirely has went the way against the way of the Salaf al-Saalih, and whoever goes against their way intentionally has become misguided, and whoever goes against their way out of ijtihad will fall into error. So these are the advices that is given. And also, there's other statements that have been mentioned about this topic, but we'll leave it with this. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people who hear speech and follow the best of it. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. بارك الله فيكم.